Hi, I'm Dan Selsberg, Rabbi at Temple Sholom here in Bridgewater, New Jersey. I've come in to give a video of my second day of Rosh Hashanah sermon. It's about anger management. So I know that Yom Kippur is a time for confession, but I like to get mine in early in case the list gets long at the last minute. So it's not all that juicy a confession, but it's not a fake one. On any day, almost every day, if I bother to take the time, I can think about bad decisions I made, situations I didn't handle as well as I should have, interactions that didn't reach a good resolution. Sometimes I can trace my mistakes to a time of day when I was tired or juggled my priorities incorrectly, but the thread running through most of my mistakes is anger. If I say the wrong thing, if I take the wrong tone, if I emphasize the wrong point, if I prioritize my time to think about things I can't do anything about, or about people who I have little hope of influencing, as often as not, the result is anger. It's true in my personal life. Somehow I'm still in disbelief that I yell at my 12-year-old kids for acting like 12-year-old kids, the same way I fruitlessly yelled at them at 10 for acting like 10-year-olds, and so on. Or when I don't yell, I take an overly patient, hint of condescending tone as an indication that I'm doing such a good job of not acting overly upset. Poorly masked anger, it turns out, does not help anyone's mood. I don't really do this at work, partly because I think only really wonderful people join Temple Shalom. I think it's part of the membership screening process. Could be that. I have another thing to atone for in Yom Kippur now. It's a good thing I started early. Or it could be that we are at our most composed to the people we see professionally or socially. You could be in a fight with your significant other or your kids or your parents, but then when the phone rings and you answer it, you're perfectly polite to somebody who's not so central to your life. So it's not that we can't control our anger, it's that we indulge it at questionable moments. This is a personal issue, and I wouldn't say it if I didn't think it was a personal issue for many of us. But it's also an American issue and a global issue. One never knows what historians of this era will highlight, but it's a safe guess that our anger and its effects will be remembered. There's much to be angry about in this world, and to our credit, instead of denying it or acting like everything's fine, we get upset. There's racial injustice, there are unjust practices directed against people for the skin they were born with. There are unjust accusations against people for the uniforms they wear. There are tensions over sexuality, over clothing, over immigration status, over religious status. We'll be here all afternoon if I list all the things to be angry about, which would only increase the anger. As Jews, we can add to the list the Israeli government's refusal to follow through on its commitments to stop religious discrimination against non-Orthodox Jews, a lack of progress towards peaceful coexistence between Israel and her neighbors, the continuing rising tide of anti-Semitism around the world, often masquerading as anti-Zionism, the mainstreaming of a BDS movement that does not support peaceful coexistence, I've searched their website, and which condemns Sabra hummus, but not Hamas's call to kill Jews wherever they may be found. So as Jews, even more than as Americans, we have a long historical memory. And we often know the horrible consequences of hateful speech. And we should be no less upset when calumnies are broadly directed against any group, whether or not we like them. We should be upset when there's bigotry against any religion, ethnicity, or any other marker of minority status. It rarely bodes well for the Jews when that happens. Besides, we don't object to past discrimination against us because it was done to us. We object because it's wrong to do to anyone. So there's a lot to be angry about. And our anger is understandable, maybe unavoidable. The question we must then ask ourselves is, do we make our best decisions when angry? I suspect not. I know it's not true of me, and it's generally not true of others. I doubt it's true of nations as a whole, and the Jewish tradition tells us repeatedly that anger is understandable, but is unlikely to lead to a desired outcome. We see it with Moshe Rabbeinu, Moses, our teacher, who has anger issues. The first acts the Torah tells us about Moses is how he was forced into exile after his furious fatal attack on an Egyptian slave driver. Moshe is frequently pushed over the edge by the whining Israelites, culminating with his losing his patience to such a degree he's not allowed into the promised land. Hard to understand as that punishment is, the takeaway is clear. Beware letting your temper get the better of you. Words spoken in anger are hard to unspeak. But Moshe's anger is just the beginning. It's also hard to read the Torah and not get the sense that God has an anger problem. In the beginning, God exiles Adam and Eve from the Garden of Eden, and the first thing God does is make them clothes for the harsh weather outside of paradise. The classical Jewish tradition sees this as an act of love. God's care extends even to those who sin, but it's also recognizable as an act of one who acted in anger and immediately finds the need to make up for an overreaction. The very next story has the same arc. Cain kills Abel, God punishes Cain, Cain protests, and God commutes the sentence. Same thing in the very next story. Noah's generation sins grievously, God wipes them out with a flood, and the first thing done afterwards is God saying God will never, ever do that again because it changed nothing. 3 stories, 3 anger-inducing acts, 3 punishments, 3 times the punishment is, in some way, walked back immediately. Anyone who has made bad decisions in anger, which is to say everyone, can recognize the pattern and the emotions that go with it. I suspect that the opening stories in Genesis are not telling us about history or about the literal creation of the world, but about how we have to learn to deal with our anger in a world that, so frequently, does not work the way we want it to. If God gets frustrated with creation, we can hardly expect to avoid that. But we can learn. The meeting of these 2 storylines is on top of Mount Sinai. The Israelites are freed from slavery, encounter God directly when the Aseret HaDibrot, the 10 Commandments, are given, and the Israelites promptly show their gratitude by worshipping the golden calf. In fact, going to a midrash and worshipping the calf, they celebrated by breaking all 10 Commandments, all at once. Those are the kind of parties I never get invited to anymore. God sees this, and the Torah says explicitly God was so angry that God wanted to destroy the entire people. Moses here keeps his cool and mounts a psychologically astute defense, which by appealing to God's own self-interest, calms God down, saves the people. He made promises to Abraham, and besides, what will the Egyptians think? Then, when Moshe goes down the mountain and sees what's actually going on, he becomes furious and smashes the tablets of the covenant. Now it's God's turn to calm Moshe Rabbeinu down, calling him back up the mountain and to partner with him in fashioning a new set of tablets. There are a couple of dozen reasons why this is a great scene, but among them we see 2 old friends, as it were, dulling the sharpness of the other's personality, giving space to vent anger, taking each other down from doing something he'd later regret. We've got a project to do together, successfully create a people who will remain committed to building a more just and kind society, but Lord knows it's not easy. So they help each other out. Again, as much as anything, that's a part of our lesson. Build trusting relationships so we can express our natural inclinations, our emotions that need to be let out, but in a safe space that prevents us from saying or doing things that work against what we're trying to accomplish. Anger is natural, and it can push us positively. That's why we're told again and again that we're not alone in struggling with handling it. God does too. But there are better and worse ways to express our disappointment with the world. Tellingly, when Moshe goes back up the mountain, God asks him to make a second set of tablets himself. God will furnish the text. Unlike the first set of tablets, which God made and Moshe broke, Moshe is given sweat equity in the second set. The Torah suggests that immersing ourselves in a physical project, especially a meaningful project that can help address the cause of our frustrations, is a better response than lashing out. Those are our earliest stories, but the focus does not shift from the importance of dealing with anger as the millennia of Jewish history have passed. In the Talmud, we're given a powerful story of a private encounter. The sages tell of one of the last Kohanim, the last priests in the temple, going to work and encountering the presence of God, whatever that means. I always picture one of those movie scenes where you open the closet door and it opens into another dimension. So in this story, God asked the Kohen for a blessing. So if you could bless God, what would you say? Talmud's blessing is, may it be your will that your mercy overcome your anger, and that you treat your children in accord with your trait of mercy, and not according to the strict letter of the law. Talk about not choking under pressure. Given one moment to offer a blessing, a suggestion to God, our intrepid ancient rabbi recalls that God struggles with some of the same issues we do, and blesses God that divine mercy should take precedence over divine anger, and that we all need to be more forgiving. Telling God that calming down might be a good idea could be the definition of chutzpah. Having just been told that chilling out a bit is the way to go, one waits for God's furious response, some version of biblical invention, or at least a Monty Python-style foot coming down from the sky and stomping this poor schlub into the ground. But what does the Talmud say happens? God nodded to me approvingly. So God knows that anger is an issue, and if we have one blessing, it's to be more merciful than angry. The message is not a theological one, it's a practical one. Anger is not just about someone else, it's about ourselves. Anger is built into the universe. That's why the tradition takes the risks of portraying God as angry, but we have to learn to manage it in a way that does not lead us to poor decision making. Anger won't pass by being told to calm down or by shouting serenity now. We need the emotional moment to pass. Pirkei Avot teaches, El tirtzed chavarecha k'sha'ah ka'aso, don't try to pacify your friend when he's in the moment of anger. Because we're not robots. We need to feel, but within reason. We won't and we shouldn't eliminate anger. It can inspire us to positive action, alert us to great wrongs, energize us in ways that a placid manner cannot. There are times when anger is a proper moral response to injustice. Other times, though, anger is mere frustration. We just need to deal with it. Exercise, go for a walk, change the subject for a while, express your anger in prayer or meditation, talk to a confidant, engage in voluntarism or political action, write your frustrations down, but don't send it. Lincoln is known to have done this. Or if you trust the person, you can send it. Just make sure that you know the relationship. Use the time you're in shul over the high holidays to let go of frustrations, to rethink your approach to anger-inducing situations or people. That is literally one of the purposes of these holidays. The wordless call of the shofar is in part a call to forgiveness and mercy, transforming what was in ancient days a call to war into a call to conquer anger. Our anger, God's anger, you name it. Before sounding the shofar, we bless Baruch Atah Hashem, Mea Kol Teruah Yisrael Barachamim. Blessed are you, Adonai, who listens to the broken call of your people Israel with compassion. A wordless call to one of our great struggles, to contain our anger. We live in a time of anger. We have always lived in a time of anger. We live in a time when technology can make our anger spread faster than ever before, and past moments of anger are more permanently searchable than ever before. We are in a time in our people's and our nation's histories when good, clear-headed decision-making will serve us well. Acknowledging our anger, but channeling it intelligently, will serve us well. Giving free rein to our anger will likely have the same result it has since literally the beginning of time. Anger, lashing out, followed by attempts to mitigate the damage. And so it's a good idea to be careful with this oldest of emotions, to understand when we use it at home, with our loved ones, at work, or at school, and as Jews, as Americans, we need not suppress our anger, but know how to handle with care. Because we will never run out of things to be angry about. God forbid we lose the freedom and wisdom to respond wisely. May we all be inscribed for a year of blessing and balance. May we all be blessed with health, fulfillment, and peace. And may our forgiveness overcome our anger. Shana Tova Mituka. Have a good and sweet, healthy year.